Good morning. Welcome to today's Ethnic Media Services Zoom News Conference. I'm Sunita Sarabji, EMS's health editor and co-coordinator of our Friday briefings with Pilar Marrero. The past 3 years have posed so many economic challenges for consumers across the U.S. Groceries and gas prices rose to unprecedented levels, and housing, both for renters and buyers, experienced dips and highs. Mortgage rates rose last fall to almost 8%, and small businesses, including the ones that many of you founded or work for, were also deeply hit. Have we moved off the precipice of the cliff towards a healthy economy? Why does it feel like so many of us are still getting pushed off? Speakers this week will share their forecast for 2024 and how an unstable economy impacts its most vulnerable residents. Our distinguished lineup today includes Chiling Tong, President and CEO at the National Asian and Pacific Islander American Chamber of Commerce and Entrepreneurship, which is National ACE. Rob Warnock, Senior Research Associate at Apartment List, Nathan Ganeshan, founder of Community Seva, and Denton Cinquegrana, Chief Oil Analyst at Oil Price Information Service, also known as OPIS. We also have a storyteller, JP Pani of Arizona, who will share how his small business has been impacted by an uncertain economy. We ask speakers to speak slowly for our interpreters in Spanish, Mandarin, and Korean. And we ask reporters to enter questions in the chat, which we will address after each speaker. Our speakers are also encouraged to answer questions in the chat throughout the conference. We will send a video of today's briefing and expanded bios with contact information for each speaker to all of our participants later on today. So let's begin first with a storyteller, Nathan Ganeshan of Community Seva, who will provide an on-the-ground perspective of the economy's impact to the Silicon Valley's most vulnerable residents. Silicon Valley, as you know, is one of the wealthiest regions in the world, and yet, Nathan, you will share a story of an entirely different Silicon Valley that you see from the ground. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you, Sunita. Thank you, all the speakers and the participants in the media. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Nathan Ganeshan, and I'm the founder of a nonprofit organization called Community Seva. Our mission is to feed the hungry and serve the homeless right here in the Bay Area. As you know, the organization was founded in 2013, and we serve our housed brothers and sisters in Santa Clara County and Alameda County on every single day. So, just for the data's perspective, we have been touched the life of over 320,000 individuals by serving them hot meals. Now we are in winter, we distribute them blankets, sleeping bags, showers, shoes, and the list goes on. So, and as rightly said, Sunita, as you rightly said, Silicon Valley is one of the 5th largest economy in the world. But when it comes to homeless population, and if you look at the national average, that the California accounts for 12% of the population in the US, of which 28% are homeless. And just in Santa Clara County alone, over 10,000 individuals are unhoused. And even though, and we see as a grassroots organization, we see this day in and out, how the unhoused population is struggling for basic needs. Housing is the major reason why they are there. We understand that. While we are, while the government is addressing, the city is addressing, counties addressing the housing challenges, one should not forget how they struggle for basic needs. Not only I'm talking about food, even the hygiene. So many women out there who are living in encampments is struggling for basic hygiene, feminine kits and things like that. We are on the ground, we see that constantly, and we are out there to help them. I'll give you a very simple incident. When we were serving a hot breakfast in Oakland, and when we come out of a parking lot, we see a woman stop me and said, she wants some food, and she has kids in the car. She has, 9 kids in the car. She's living in a van with 9 kids in the car, and she's struggling to feed her own children. And that's a situation of a unhoused family in the Bay Area. And especially this economy, I'm not sure able to accept that the economy is really, improving, or, it's in the rise. But the struggle, what we are seeing on the ground with the unhoused is really rising every single day. There was a study from from the Second Harvest, where 1 out of 4 people in Santa Clara County are starving for food. That's very scary data. 1 out of 4. And if you see, when we go give the food, they say that, can you give us a Safeway card, a grocery card? Because food, cooked food, most of them are able to give. But when it comes to grocery card, they want to buy so many other items. And so even during this Thanksgiving, we distributed several, $25 gift cards, Safeway gift cards to our unhoused people, so that they can buy for Thanksgiving for their own, what they want to buy. And housing, of course, right? Even the recent news, which he talks about tech layoffs. These tech layoffs we have a severe impact on the housing, and that in turn throw people on the street. More and more parking lots, people are living in RVs and cars is rising in Santa Clara County. When I was talking to a person, he said, I lost a job, but I don't really worry because I can get another job. But I lost my house, and I cannot get another house in the area. With Santa Clara County being the top county in California with highest rents, as well as the housing price, it is impacting. This economy is not really helping especially the unhoused and vulnerable community. I would be happy to answer any questions or any additional information you may need.
Nathan, could you share, I know you shared a story, but could you share a story of a particularly vulnerable family or person that you have been working with? And have you been able to move them from being unhoused into a more stable situation? And what are some of your policy suggestions for what local governments and federal government can do to ease this situation?
Yeah, sure. At this juncture, I will be very honest that, Community Seva is not completely transformed ourselves into providing housing. We work with various shelter organizations and advocates to see if we can file. But what we do right now, is one step at a time. We provide temporary motel stay. Recently, this is very heartwarming to hear. Recently, an 75-year-old individual who had cancer, who was just released from the hospital, and he's on street. He's more vulnerable with all the health conditions. So we found a motel in Milpitas. So we were able to accommodate him for initial 5 days so that he can bring up his health condition stable, and then, look at other options. So that's what we are doing. At this point in time, we are not providing housing, but we are at least providing a temporary stay for vulnerable, because most of the unhoused who go into the hospital, they go into the emergency, have been chucked out in 24 hours because nobody's going to pay for their bills. So 24 hours they're on the street. So we assess those kind of situations, work with homeless advocates to help them out. To answer your second question, Sunita, yes, the most, the solution is the permanent housing. Temporary housing are, those are, it's okay, but not going to really solve the problem. Today, to solve the problem, I know San Jose City and Santa Clara County is working together to do things, building affordable housing. But, place is the major challenge. Many Bay Area residents, they said, not in my backyard. When they have that not in my backyard, where the city anywhere going to find a place? They build 50 houses when there is a Santa Clara County has 10,000 Hanos population. There's no way the math is close to it.
There are a few questions for you in the chat, Nathan. Let's start out with Orhan Arkut. Orhan, could you please ask your question and identify your news organization?
Yes, Zaman America, Orhan. So, as you know, we are in the election year. So
Yes.
also the tech is starting layoff as far as we know, and they're planning to lay off more. So how they will affect that, the economy, I mean, basically the people's, ordinary people's.
Definitely, it's going to affect the economy. Me being in the recruiting world for the last 23 years, we see that very well. That any layoff will not only just losing, it has a a chain of effect. It's going to impact the daycare if their kids are going to daycare. It's going to impact the payments, mortgage payments. Eventually, it depends on the family size. If another earning person, of course, in Santa Clara County, one person earning and living is something close to impossible. But if it is so, and it's going to they're going to be on the street. And people living in cars. We went and I personally have spoken to many individuals. They are surprised to see they are on the street because they are on the car, because that's the only safe. They don't want to be in encampments. They don't want to be in shelters. They feel, it's better to be safe in my own car. So definitely this layoff is going to impact the economy for sure.
Absolutely. And Orhan, you had a follow-up question, and then Henrietta, please ask your question after Orhan is finished.
So as you know, so the tech company, they're hiring offshore, which is they paying less to labor. Instead of hiring in United States, they hiring offshores, which is more, I mean, less labor payment. So this is kind of, it's about the Democrats or Republican. I don't want to drag the topic to there, but specifically the question, what is the main reason for tech to lay off? They just want to get the more revenue, or they're in the economic trouble or something like that. So what is the main reason the tech is starting to lay off?
I'm not sure really, offshoring is the main reason. Every company is doing offshoring. Gone are the days only few companies. Now every company has an offshore presence. Maybe yes, cost is one benefit, but they also have several other reasons which I really don't know. But if you ask me for sure, if you look at it, Google, why they have laid off? They have laid off very specific, the advertising wing. So as the customers start not spending money, the advertisements, even if you look at it, if you are not advertising because you don't have enough money, or your funding or your situation, you don't want to do more advertisements, so that is impacting Facebook and Google, and that is the reason, that is the only section they have laid off. That's what I read. I'm not speaking for Google, but if that is the case, right, there's no offshoring comes into picture. So offshoring could be one of the reasons, but I don't see that is the reason for this layoff. This is mainly on advertisement, where the economy, the people are not spending enough money. That's where it is.
Thank you. And Henrietta Burrows, could you please ask your question and identify your news organization?
Yes, thanks, Sunita. Henrietta Burrows, the East Palo Alto Today newspaper. When the pandemic started, the governor of California started the Home Key program, which gave vouchers for the homeless to stay in motels and hotels, and that program needs to be refunded now. Do you think that was a helpful program and should be continued?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree. Because, when we were also trying to do the same thing at that point in time, every motel was full. There's so many people, especially in this weather. It's not the right place to be, and people be on the streets. And if they can be on the motel, it is definitely a big help. And in fact, I think I heard about the Los Angeles mayor is trying to do the same thing. She's trying to pull all the people out of the street until a permanent housing solution is been designed and developed. At least temporarily, they're off the street. And I heard videos they were feeling, announced people were feeling very happy. They feel dignified that I'm living in a motel and people are at least speaking to them on the street. Earlier, they were nobody even paying attention to them. So I would absolutely support that.
Nathan, thank you so much for your comments. And I wanted to point reporters to a resource, which is the Point and Time Survey. The Point and Time Survey is conducted by every county every year. And volunteers go out on the street and literally count the number of people on the street. So it's a terrific resource for your reporting. And every county does this on an annual basis. So do look at Point in Time surveys. We next welcome Rob Warnock of Apartment List. Logical jump to looking at what renters and buyers are going to be facing in the year ahead. Welcome, Rob.
Hi, thank you. Yes, nice to meet everybody. Nice to be here. My name is Rob Warnock, and I am a senior research associate at Apartment List. Apartment List is an online rental marketplace where people can go to see apartments that are available for rent in their area. And specifically at Apartment List, I'm a member of the economics team. So our goal is to research the housing market, and we publish reports and publish data that we put on our blog for public use. So my goal today is to provide kind of just a really high-level overview of the housing market and how it's evolved throughout the pandemic. As I'm sure a lot of you know and maybe experiencing personally, prices in the housing market have skyrocketed and affordability has definitely worsened. And so what I'd like to try to do is explain our theory as to why this has happened and share a little bit about what makes us more optimistic for the future of the rental market, at least. So ultimately, prices are a function of supply and demand. I think that the housing market during the pandemic has been an absolute textbook example of this. I did want to share one chart here that I believe I should be able to pull up. Are we seeing this?
Yes.
Great. So what this chart is showing is price changes, which I think is the metric that comes to mind most when we're talking about housing. And specifically what this is how much housing prices have gone up since March of 2020. We've got it for apartment rentals, which is the purple line, and we've got it for home purchases, which is the green line. Before the pandemic, there really wasn't many dramatic changes to supply and demand, and so prices were trending up, but they were at a fairly steady rate, and they were at roughly the same rate that incomes were going up. But you can see that COVID was an inflection point. Suddenly, there were rapid changes in the supply and the demand of housing, and it created a lot of volatility in price, and as you can infer from this chart, a much less affordable housing market. Just looking quickly at the green line, the for sale market, the story is pretty simple, and it's pretty disheartening, frankly, for people who are potential home buyers. You know, at the start of the pandemic, a lot of people took their homes off the market while a lot of other people decided now is the time I want to buy. So we saw supply come down and we saw demand go up and prices skyrocketed immediately. That's what happened in 2020. It continued in 21. It continued in 2022. And it really didn't slow down until the middle of 2022 when the Federal Reserve finally started to raise interest rates, which did bring some relief to home prices. But as we can see today, homes are still 45% more expensive right now than they were before the pandemic started. Not to mention that home buyers are facing higher monthly mortgage interest rates. Part of the reason that home prices are so much higher than rent prices right now is because, well, we can kind of see the difference in trajectory if we compare the green line to the purple line. The rental market has had a very different trajectory from the for sale market. So in 2020, as there was a lot of demand for buying a home, there was much less demand for renting an apartment. And while there was not a lot of housing supply for sale, there was a lot of vacant apartments for rent. So in that first year of the pandemic, we see that rent prices actually went down across the country. It's kind of the exact opposite of what was happening in the for sale market because supply and demand, the relationship was flipped. That changes again in 2021 as the economy starts to emerge from the pandemic. Vacant apartments become scarce, much like for sale homes became scarce, and rents started to rise quickly for 2 years, bringing the affordability crisis to its peak in 2022. That was a point when over half of all of the renters in the United States were cost burdened, meaning that they were spending more than the recommended 30% of their income on rent. But since then, we've seen a bit of a turnaround. Unlike home prices, which continued to grow, we've actually seen rents declining a bit from 2022. And the big reason for this is supply. It's construction in new apartments. Today, we are at the early stages of a massive housing construction boom. There were nearly 500,000 brand new apartments that opened last year. And right now, there's about 1 million more that are under construction across the country that are going to be coming online in the next year or two. And this means there's going to be more vacant apartments. This means that renters are going to have more opportunities to find a good deal. And it's going to encourage landlords to lower their prices in order to fill those vacancies. So it's some of the same market dynamics that we were seeing back in 2020. We've got supply that's currently growing faster than demand, and so prices are coming down a bit. Since 2022, rents are down 4%. And just to reiterate, I think this is all providing an extremely productive example of what can happen when housing becomes less scarce and starts to become more abundant. So let me take this photo off the screen and just to really quickly wrap up about what we're expecting to see for the housing market going forward into 2024. In the for sale side, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to get much better. The Federal Reserve has indicated that they're not going to raise interest rates any further. So there should be more homes coming onto the market, but we know that there's plenty of demand from people who want to buy those homes. So experts are anticipating that prices should continue to rise next year. But we're a little bit more optimistic in the rental market because of the housing construction boom that I was just talking about. We're expecting supply to grow strong for the next 12 to 24 months. And all of those new apartments that come online are going to continue to put downward pressure on rents. So for 2024, we're expecting rent growth to be modest yet again, just like it was this past year in 2023. And finally, to close out, something important to mention whenever we're talking about housing, the housing markets are extremely localized. So far, I've been talking about the national landscape, but there's no question that the markets in California are behaving differently than markets in Florida, are different than Idaho, and so on. Where I'm located in the San Francisco Bay Area, rents are actually not very different from where they were in 2020, given some fluctuations. But if you're in certain markets in Arizona or Florida, we're looking at rent growth upwards of 40% during the pandemic. So I'm sure a lot of people are interested in that local data, and I did want to just call out that our team at Apartment List, we have that data. We produce it for hundreds of markets across the country, and we want to make it available to you. That's what we do it for. So you'll have my contact at the end of this. I want to make sure everybody here is welcome to reach out to me if you want to talk about the market and where it's going, or if you want access to some of that data. That's what we're here for. So with that, I will sign off and open things up for Q&A.
You mentioned your blog at the start of your remarks. Where can reporters access your blog to get maybe weekly or monthly data? Yeah, we update everything monthly. So our website, apartmentlist.com/research, I'll put it in the chat. There's a section where you can essentially sign up for regular updates. Whenever we produce that data, we ask you what part of the country you're interested in so that we try and focus what we send you on that.
But we've also got our own contact information on the website. So you can sign up for regular updates, or you can shoot us an email, whatever works. There's a small team of 3 of us, so we are there to help. Yeah.
Fantastic. A reporter asks, what are the areas of the US that were hardest hit? And I know you've mentioned some of this in your remarks, but if you could maybe drill down on some specific areas outside of California, especially, that would be hugely useful.
Yeah, definitely. And hardest hit is a subjective term, but what I think we mean here are places where the affordability crisis has gotten worse. And it's a lot of the markets that have seen huge increases in housing demand over the past couple of years. And so I mentioned Arizona. That is a market. The markets in Arizona have seen tremendous rent growth. Florida is another one. The Carolinas, both North and South Carolina, have become increasingly popular and increasingly expensive. These are the parts of the country that have a combination of being very attractive for their affordability offerings, pre-pandemic, that is. But also there are places that tend to have less institutionalized tenant protection, less rent control, less rent stabilization. So when the pandemic happened and suddenly supply and demand allowed for landlords to increase rents 40% year over year, there was nothing stopping that from happening. And a lot of renters were sort of at the will there. So yeah, those are markets that have kind of transformed from being places that people thought of as being affordable to where now there is a lot of pressure just to be able to afford your monthly housing costs.
Absolutely. Both Henrietta and Orhan have questions for you. Henrietta, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Sunita. You seem to be very positive in thinking that the boom in new housing apartments will push down the rates. And I'm wondering, since the apartment supply has been so far below what the demand is, wouldn't it take years for there to be the balance that would maybe stabilize the apartments right now? In California, single family, one room being like $3,000 to rent. And my question in the chat is, will there be apartments available below market rate for low income renters?
Yeah. So, yeah. So when we talk about housing abundance, the goal there is for housing to be made available to all different levels of demand. So of course, market rate housing is the classic example of what comes in. But I think we are all in agreement that market rate housing has its place. Subsidies that exist to support people who are lower income definitely has its place. Tax credits to incentivize the development of below market rate housing is just as important as those other kinds. So when we look at the data and how many apartments are under construction right now, it's inclusive of all of that and very much a part of each location's kind of local policy to decide how that housing is going to get distributed. But we've had data now, the pandemic a little over 3 years ago, coming up on its 4th year, we've seen a very clear relationship between the rate of supply growth in markets across the country and the rate of rent growth. And it is very strong and very clear that the places that have been able to offer more homes are the places where rent prices have gone up the least. And so, as I keep saying, like it's been a textbook first day of economics class example of supply and demand. And hopefully it's a lesson that we can all learn from and try to encourage this more abundance of housing.
In Santa Clara County, does that rate of growth hold for Santa Clara County in terms of apartment supply meeting the need, meeting the demand in the near future?
I am not familiar, to be honest, with what Santa Clara County's sort of outlook is on how much supply will be coming online there. But Santa Clara County and the broader Bay Area is certainly a part of the country where earlier in the pandemic we saw large decreases in rent prices due to the change in relationship between supply and demand. There was a huge reduction in demand for housing in the Bay Area, in the rental market specifically. And some of these communities here actually saw prices go down. We tracked in San Francisco specifically rent declines greater than 20% in that period. We don't expect that we're going to see that huge reduction in demand for housing and demand for apartments going forward. So instead, the way to continue that trend forward is to improve the supply of homes and make sure that we are able to accommodate all of the people who want to live and work here and make sure that they have affordable places to live.
Rob, thank you so much. There are a couple more questions for you in the chat, and if you could answer them there, that would be terrific.
Sure.
We move on to Denton Cinquegrana of OPIS, who will provide an overview of what consumers will face at the gas pump, along with remarks on the drivers of gas prices. Welcome, Denton.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me. And
Of course.
greetings from a snowy New Jersey today. So I think all you guys are in Northern California, mostly at least, and talking about how cold it is there. Well, it's pretty chilly here. So, but my name is Denton Cinquegrana. I'm Chief Oil Analyst at OPIS. I've been with OPIS for, gosh, it's going to be 23 years next month. So I've been following oil markets and gasoline and diesel markets for quite some time. We provide, give you a little background on OPIS. We provide downstream news and data to the downstream oil business. So these are the people who buy gasoline or diesel from refiners and then distribute to the retail stations. And a couple of ways that we're kind of in everyone's lives. So if your car, for example, has gas prices in it, we sell that data to a lot of the auto manufacturers. We provide data for AAA for their national average, et cetera. So that's kind of how OPIS kind of fits into almost everyday life. But we have a pretty long list of subscribers who use our daily prices for contract, kind of normalization, and all our services for those types of things. So it's kind of where we fit into the kind of energy business, at least on the petroleum side. Just kind of a quick kind of review. So the national average for gasoline in 2023 was about $3.52, obviously well below where it was in 2022 when oil prices skyrocketed to almost to $150 again when Russia attacked Ukraine. And part of the reason for that was there was a real concern that the global markets were going to lose, 7-8 million barrels a day of crude oil production from Russia. But as the year went on, the realization came to the market that, hey, we're not really losing all that oil production from Russia. They're still producing, they're still exporting to countries like China and India that were not participating in the sanctions program against Russia. Fast forward to this year or this past year, there were times when the retail gasoline price was $1 or more than the year prior. And that's when you see, the Biden administration coming out and, kind of celebrating the fact that gas prices were down. But when you talk about gas prices in 2024, you have to start with oil markets. So right now, oil, West Texas Intermediate, which is kind of the U.S. spec gas crude oil, it's about $73.50 a barrel. Brent, which is kind of considered the global benchmark, is about $78.50 a barrel. Couple things that are going on here in the beginning of the year is OPEC and OPEC Plus. They mentioned last year production cuts. They're enacting those starting on January 1st. So we'll get the first look at how those cuts are going probably in the next several weeks. Meanwhile, you have the whole issue with the Red Sea, geopolitics, the Middle East tensions are really kind of on the rise. But the fact of the matter is you haven't seen any oil production shut in as a result of these tensions. The only thing that's really happened so far is because companies are avoiding the Red Sea, you're just adding time and money to the shipment of oil because you have to go around the Cape of Good Hope in Africa So that adds an extra almost 2 weeks to the distance traveled, and it adds to the price, obviously. That being said, this year we do expect gasoline prices to be a little bit cheaper than they were last year. I mentioned earlier that that national average was about $3.52. This year we're probably going to be in the 345 to 350 area, so not that much cheaper, but a little bit cheaper. And the one thing to keep in mind when it comes to gasoline is the markets are incredibly seasonal. So right now, obviously, it's winter, demand is really low, especially in California, especially when it rains. And I think there's some rain in the forecast for Northern California this coming weekend. So that's those in the industry would call it liquid demand killer. So that's what happens when it rains. Obviously, snow falling here in the Northeast, and obviously when it's snowing, you don't really go out and drive. But it's also cold. The sun goes down earlier. There's no real incentives to drive. Oh, the holidays are over now and the bills are coming due. So really no incentive to drive right now. So this is also the time of year when refiners go into maintenance. They fix everything up, change some hoses and pumps and this, that, prepare the units at the refineries for the summer driving season and when the spring comes around and the formulation of gasoline switches. The recent spate of cold weather that we had last week and this week, it has caused some issues because refineries are built to run in some pretty extreme temperatures, but not for long periods of time. So obviously something to keep an eye on, but we're fortunately in a point of time where gasoline demand is pretty low. Now, if you remember last summer, the heat waves that we saw across Texas and the Southeast, a refinery on the Gulf Coast is built to run when it's close to 100 degrees, but that's only for a day or two. When you have day after day after day after day after 100+ degree temperatures, refineries can run into some real issues. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on. Weather always has an impact. The other thing is hurricanes, especially if a hurricane goes into the Gulf Coast. That's something we don't have to worry about until really the third quarter of the year. The United States exports a lot of gasoline, not just, we produce gasoline obviously for domestic use, but also export a lot to Latin America and South America. So that's going to continue. There's some large refineries coming online globally. It's going to take a little bit of time for them to produce on-spec gasoline. They'll start with making diesel and jet fuel and be able to export that and fulfill their own domestic needs. There's one very large one in Nigeria, 650,000 barrels a day, just really getting started. We'll probably see that kind of change the Atlantic basin a little bit, probably towards the end of this year and into next year. But more specifically to the United States, I do think, like I said, the national average this year will probably be a little bit less than last year, call it 5 to 15 cents less. But I do think you're going to obviously, see hotspots like what Rob was talking about. Things vary very much regionally. That happens with gasoline markets as well. California, for example, where you all are, most of you are, a very unique specification of gasoline that outside of California in the United States, not many refineries can make it. So when you have refinery issues in California, it's hard to get resupply. And when you add in the fact that the Panama Canal right now is really struggling with some issues, that adds time to kind of resupplying those markets. California has a couple of environmental programs as well that those costs get passed on to the consumer. And that's why you see California prices get much more than other states in the country, and taxes play a role as well. But I think that western part of the United States is, kind of the hot spot. The Great Lakes can also be a hot spot for gas prices, especially in the summertime. And here in the Northeast, we've lost some refining capacity over the years. So the Northeast can get pretty dicey when it comes to gasoline prices and see some pretty significant spikes here in the short term. And this will all take place in the spring and summertime when the formulation changes. The way I like to describe it is, think about baking a cake. Like gasoline is just it's a recipe. It's not just you don't put oil into a refinery and gasoline comes out the other side. You take a bunch of different components to make gasoline. So you have eggs and milk and oil and flour. But the difference is in the wintertime, you could say use all-purpose flour, which is cheaper, a little easier to find. But in the summer and spring, when that formulation changes, you have to use, say, gluten-free flour, which is a little bit more expensive. You may have to go to a specialty store to find it versus your regular grocery store. So that's kind of the difference that takes place there. And obviously, you see gasoline demand rise in the spring and summertime. So I guess that probably about wraps it up. And happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Denton. So we have a couple of really good questions. Henrietta, please ask your question.
Thanks again, Sunita. Denton, as the country electrifies more and more, as consumers get electric cars and heat pumps, and what effect would that have on the price of oil? I would think it would increase the supply, which would then lower the cost.
It would, but again, this is very, very slow. So, here's my phone. I change this every, 2-3 years? The car in my driveway I've had for 10 years. I don't change that as often. So think about it this way when it comes to the vehicle fleet. How many cars are in the United States? A couple hundred million? You're not going to switch over the fleet that quickly. So it does take about 10, 12 years to turn over the fleet. Now, granted, in a place like California, you see it's California and everyone else when it comes to electric vehicle registrations. But I think slowly over time, you're going to see electric vehicles have an impact on oil prices and obviously oil demand. The fact that the one thing I think, there's two things actually that have impacted gasoline demand more so over the past several years is the cars we drive now versus 10, 15, 20 years ago are so much more efficient than they were years ago. So you're doing more with less. Additionally, due to the pandemic, there's still a lot of folks that work from home. So you could see in my background, I am not in an office. I work from home. Sometimes it drives me nuts because I look at the same 4 walls from the past 4 years. But anyway, those two factors probably maybe even a little bit more than electric cars, which are coming. It's just going to take some time, and that should keep a lid on prices. But I've been doing this for a long time. I started out by analyzing electricity markets, and 25 years ago I heard about how coal wasn't going to be around for much longer. So just something to keep in the back of the mind there.
Absolutely. I have a question for you. We've got a major conflict going on right now with the Houthis, and you've got the Red Sea, which so much of our supply chain comes through. Do you anticipate that oil and gas prices are going to go up as we figure out this conflict? Or how significantly is it going to play?
Yeah. No, I think, like I mentioned before, the only thing that we've seen happen with it is that it's added time on shipments and added to the cost because obviously the ships are being used for longer, and obviously shipping companies won't have that available capacity, if you will. I think as far as the Iranians are concerned, I think they're willing to agitate but not escalate, if that makes sense. I think they'll continue to fund the Houthis, and we've seen missiles getting lobbed back and forth for the better part of 2 weeks now in the Red Sea, and the price of oil has not gone up that much. We're still in the low 70s. So until we see some sort of disruption to production of oil, I just I don't know if we get outside of that kind of seasonal tendency for markets to go up in the second quarter.
Denton, thank you so much. And if you could drop in the chat some resources for reporters to access your information, that would be terrific.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we
pleasure.
Next welcome Chiling Tong of National ACE. Welcome, Chiling, who will talk about the impact to small businesses and your forecast for what small businesses will face in 2024. Thank you so much for joining us, Chiling.
Thank you. Thank you for Sunita's invitation to participate in this very important news briefing. I really enjoyed the discussion today. I tell you, I have to say that EMS has done amazing work to bring all the professional journalists here together. You guys help to keep the quality of news coverage. I really tip my hat to all of you, especially founder Miss Sandy Close. My name's Chiling Tong, President CEO of the National Asian American Pacific Islander Chamber of Commerce and Entrepreneurship. We also call National ACE. We serve as the national voice of AAPI, which is the Asian American Pacific Islander entrepreneurs, representing their business interests and working to promote their economic and social well-being. We have three main focuses. The first one is policy-driven. We support and promote issues that impact the AAPI business community. We have our annual policy agenda, or 2024 policy agenda will be on the website pretty soon. Hope you will be able to take a look. And among all those very important policy, those are very important for the AAPI community are access to capital, collection of meaningful data, digital equity, health equity, artificial intelligence, supply diversity, representation and racial equity, sustainability, workforce development, privacy, and international commerce. The number two is a program driven. We try to enhance the economic development and impact of the AAPI community. Since the COVID 2021, we have served about 40,000 businesses. We have conducted about 120 webinars, especially technical assistance to the underserved communities. We also have awarded about $8 million in grants to minority-owned small business, especially Grubhub and National ACE, AAPI Strong Restaurant Fund. One of our awardees will share his story later. But can you imagine like a karate academy in Hawaii? Because of money, they are able to purchase uniform, increase their uniform inventory. And also like a tea shop in Waco, Texas. Child community was able to expand and open their second tea shop. And also there's a flower store, the owner who passed away at the age of 97 years old. And you know, in Asian American family, a lot of small business, so ownership transferred to young generation. So at that time, the business was running at a loss. Because of our grant, they are able to add external lighting, new signage, and also at least right now, they are break even and they are able expect to get revenue, more in the future. The number three is alliance. We work with over 120 affiliate AAPI chambers and partner organizations around the country to ensure we advance coalition enhancing community building and especially fostering the next generation of AAPI business leaders. So in your state, we all have a different chamber partners over there. We really hope we'll be able to connect you with them to hear more stories from them. So AAPI is the fastest growing minority community in the US. We are able to make up almost 10% of all the entrepreneurs in the United States, with about 2.9 million AAPI business owners, employing about 5.1 million people. In 2021, AAPIs contribute over $1 trillion in economic output. So, of course, like all other minority business, AAPI business continue to recover from the pandemic and the challenging economic climate that has been created in its aftermath. During the COVID, AAPIs are dealing with not only the virus, but also anti-AAPI hate. Even right now, during the at that time, there was about 11,000 reported incident, and the majority of them is for the small business owners, and also especially for women. So the top issue we see AAPI facing is access to capital, which they really need to successfully grow their business and thrive. According to our most recent survey data, almost 30% of AAPI respondents have a very low confidence that they could find an emergency $5,000 business expense. And also, they do not have the capital to hire workers, and they do not have the capital to purchase real estate, property, equipment, showing how lack of access to capital holds back AAPI entrepreneurs from growing or scaling their business. Talking about the lack of access to capital, I really want to, briefly discuss about capital readiness program. We are one of the 43 organizations to receive a capital readiness grant from NBDA. So we're able to help a small business owner to raise capital and effectively operating their business. So if any small business owner, they are interested, they can register for our 8 weeks of accelerator program, only 1 hour per week on every Tuesday. And our website is nationalace.org. Of course, we also have other survey, but I would love to spend more time to discuss with you during the Q&A. And right now, I would like to invite JP, who is the owner of Alaho Allen Market in Arizona, to share with you his experience as a small business owner and what his outlook is for 2024. JP.
Aloha, aloha, everyone. Thank you, Chiling. Thank National ACE, AAPI, Strong for, we attend early last year, a ACE National Convention or workshop, and we had received $50,000 or probably 4.5 million, just kidding, $50,000 from the National ACE Foundation. So we were blessed. And just a little bit background, and I'll get to the point. We were blessed with the $50,000 grant that helps. We changed and threw out a lot of our old equipments that we had to repair over and over and over again, and time and cost management and so forth. So that's helping us with the restaurant a lot, tons of help. The opportunity that we opened on the year COVID started, I wanted to test the waters of the market. I wanted to see where are these property investment, where are they at as far as renting a space. And I thought that was the best thing to do because the prices were low. We hit them hard and we end up opening on COVID. We did pretty good that first year, second year, going into our third year. But there was like a slow period and I did some observations. I looked at the capital gain. I looked at the marketing, strategic planning. I kind of surround myself with a lot of different brainstorm. What can we do better and survive in this market with thousands of restaurants and stores are closing ASAP. Since last year, this year, half of the restaurants main chain will be closing. So it kind of get me going on my homework so I can do better on sales for my market and make sure my business is out there. And I focus a lot on marketing, hand out flyers. My work starts every day at 3 a.m. I answer emails. I try to figure out planning. And then after that, we do the cooking and whatnot and open the store and then we're done. But at the same time, if you ask me how we done it, I think the Lord's blessing, but we do everything. We do the cargo, we do the stocking. I mean, we do everything in the store just to cut costs and just to save time and not spend too much or hire other employees that will take a bunch of the budget. So here we are, we're still surviving the big wave, but we have brand new surfboards to ride it out. And with that surfboard, it comes with educational packages. Number one, from all of you, you guys gave us some good tips. Number two, we are with the Mesa Chamber of Commerce. Number three, we are with Mesa Entrepreneurship. So one thing we did really good, and I thought that it was a blast. We had a couple of entrepreneur people come and visit the store and say, hey, you're not going to hurt my feelings, my wife and I. We want to know how to get better, faster, stronger, and grow our business. So they looked at both of our sides and they says, number one, do you really need those 2 spaces? And I was like, ding, we don't, because 1 space alone costs between 3,000 to 4,000. Now this year it's going up. So we gave up that one site and we condensed and have it here on the other suite. What's unique about it is that when we travel and do our cargo, I take a paper and a pen and I do some little surveys. Then I look at all the magazines, places where you buy your water, magazine and all that. And I like, hey, look, they put all their products and their jewelry stuff from ground up and they use the spaces from the bottom to the top. Why can't we do that when we condense to one? So that's what we decide to do. Second one is we going more 93, 94% food and 7% just souvenirs and whatnot, you know. And the unique thing here in Arizona is we're the only Polynesian traditional Aloha Island market, AZ, here in the state of Arizona. We're the only and the unique of its kind. There's tons of Polynesian restaurants, food, Aloha Island grinds, mokies. But what feedback we got is that, JP, none of your food is on their menu. And I says, you know why? It's because we are traditional. We come from the islands. We know how to cook tradition. The other ones, I know the owners. I love them, but they're too conventional, too more Americanized. You don't put soya, a little bit salt, and a little bit sugar, and then say, call it soya chicken. You don't do that. We don't cook like that. We cook traditional. If Chinese would cook real Chinese food, I walk in the store, I would know a restaurant if it's traditional. I would know if it's traditional for American Indian, fried bread, or Hispanic. So, but anyway, that's the life and the story of my wife and I, Lau Kao. We're both from the islands, but we're both born and raised in America. But at the same time, we understand how it works. And my dad been in military for years, traveling all over the world. We get to see an opportunity and eye-opener for us to bring back and share with the people here in the state of Arizona. So we also have a nonprofit. It's called the Super Youth Program. And I wanted to give some tips and information to, what's his name that went first? That was Nathan Gaines. So what I wanted to ask him, find out who's the community growth economic. These are boards of directors that are under and sits under the governor's seat, and they attack the problem in the community and different ethnic groups, whether it's Asian stuff. Find out who they are, sit on the meetings, be a part of it, because within a year or two, I've done that for 18 years. We have solved a lot of problems with housing, education, sports, gang violence. I was a gang violence director for 14 years. Every 2 years, we travel to different countries worldwide, and we do gang. We share, like for example, South America has one of the highest rates.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we've got a couple of questions for Chiling, and I'd like to get to those before we end. Thank you so much for providing an on-the-ground perspective. Very much appreciated. Chiling, access to capital was yes, absolutely. Has the Small Business Administration and the Biden administration been able to invest significantly in small businesses at the level that's needed, or do small businesses tend to get the short shrift from DC?
Yeah, I tell you what, for Asian American community, during the COVID, because of PPP, 60%, based on our data, 6% of them, they do not know. And also because of language barriers. So even though government provide a lot of resources and program, but a lot of AAPI community, they do not know. So this is one of our challenges. We really need to share with them about all the important resources and that they can use. But however, 2023 was a record year for small business growth, with over 5.5 million new small businesses created, according to the U.S. Small Business Administration, and 20% of small business owners say the economy has improved compared with 12 months ago.
That's fantastic. Did you see the shuttering of a lot of small businesses over the past 3 years? And do you expect them to return?
Oh, yeah. I tell you, if you're looking ahead in 2024, the thing most top of mind for AAPI small business, including workforce challenge and high inflation, interest and living costs and growth of artificial intelligence and supply chain issues. Hiring challenges impact the ability of 44% of small business to operate at a full capacity. So workforce, issue is another very critical issues among small business owners. But at least right now, during our survey, 74% of small businesses, they feel very positive. And also they think they embrace change and adapt to use new technologies address their barriers.
Thank you. Final question for both Rob and Chiling. We're coming up on to November 2024. How significantly will voters regard the economy as the issue that they vote on? Rob, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the biggest issues out there right now. In particular, our focus being on housing. I think housing has gone from being this sort of more niche economic topic to something that is central to some of the more mature political discussions that are taking place right now. And places like California are serving as examples, good or bad, for policy and kind of the future of housing. So at least as far as we see it and pay attention, incredibly important, the economy that is on sort of people's perspectives going into the election cycle.
Thank you. Chiling, AAPIs are such a significant population of new voters, and how do you see them voting given the economic challenges that we are facing today? Is the economy going to be a significant factor in how they vote?
Well, I think among AAPI business community, economy is the number one issue. And in general, it's still very, very important because what they have faced in the last 3 years, from the pandemic, inflation, rising living costs, and all the disruption supply chain, they think they still feel very positive, but they really wish the leader of this country will lead them to a better economy.
Thank you. Thank you to all our speakers and reporters for joining us. Next week, we focus on the border. Pilar Marrero will be moderating, and we hope to see you then. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.